Well, I'm Richard Connor, and I'm editor-in-chief of the United Nations World Water Development Report. There's a lot of little complicated links between water, peace, and prosperity. Let's start with prosperity. The first most obvious is probably water and sanitation. Without safe water and safe sanitation, you've got health risks. From health risks bring an inability to go to school, so you've got problems with education, and of course you've got inability to go to work. If you can't go to work, then your whole livelihoods are at stake and things like that. But the relationship with prosperity goes beyond just jobs and employment and things like that. Because you think about a nation or a community's electricity supply. You can't really have electricity without water for the most part. If you're coal-based, thermal-based, I mean, you need water for your cooling systems. Of course, you need water for food security. It's not just about feeding people, but just think about the jobs that are involved with agriculture. Of course, if you need water to grow food, but if you've got a drought or something like that, and you're not growing food, so then the farmers don't have jobs. But if the farmers don't have jobs, neither do the person that drives the truck from the farm to the market, the people that work in the market, the people in the bank that are dealing with the loans and the savings of the farmers. So the repercussions on water and prosperity are absolutely huge and across the board. It's kind of difficult to figure out how water and water scarcity can lead to tensions and disputes. Basically, the whole idea of a water stress or water scarcity is a combination of how much water you need, or demand, if you will, and how much water is available. And you can't really change much about what's available. So stress or tensions or disputes are really over different groups or users that have different demands. Negotiation is pretty much the only solution. Now, you've got technical solutions, but then usually technical solutions have costs. Just think about irrigation efficiency. Irrigation uses 70% of the world's water. Now, improvements in irrigation can really remove demand or lessen demand from agriculture, which makes more water available. But who is going to pay for this additional efficiency from the farmers? Well, how about the cities or the communities that need to benefit, that will receive more water? Well, if they contribute to the efficiency for agriculture, then it's a win-win situation. So this is the type of sort of peaceful, democratic, and open, transparent approach that is essential to the whole UN approach to water and water governance. When you're looking at water scarcity or water stress, you're really looking at the difference between water availability and how much water that the different users in a community, in an area, need. And the closer you are to maximizing the water available, then the closer you're going to get to tensions. Very often, worldwide, agriculture uses 7% of water. So, of course, efficiencies in irrigation can really improve water availability for other users. But if you're approaching a limit to water availability, if you're getting towards extreme stress, you're bound to have disputes among those that have been using this water for a long time and whose demands are increasing. For the most part, agriculture demand is not increasing, but cities are growing really rapidly. And to maintain water supply and sanitation services, that means that their demand for water is really increasing, and they have to get it somewhere. So invariably, tensions are going to grow between the municipalities and the farmer groups. But there's ways around that, and that is for the municipalities themselves to help and to assist and to support the farmers in increasing their efficiency so they don't use as much water. And then that's the best way to relieve tensions without any conflict or but of course, you need to have the best thing to do is to have the institutions. You know, you need some sort of the equivalent of a judge or a jury or something like that to balance, to make sure that one party doesn't take advantage of the other, and that there's transparency and that there's no corruption in the system. It's estimated that half the world's population lives in countries that suffer from pretty high levels of water scarcity at least 1 month a year. And this is probably going to get worse with respect to climate change. Now, with climate change, generally and very generally, wet places are going to get wetter and dry areas are going to get drier. Just because a wet area will get wetter, that is a yearly average. You have to look at seasonality, because if you get all of your rain over a 3-day period, the rest of the year you're going to be suffering water scarcity. There's no two ways around it. It's all about storage. You have to find ways to store water when it's available. And you basically have two options. One is surface storage, which is quite expensive, and it's a dams and reservoirs. And one of the big disadvantages to that is that the surface of the water is exposed to the atmosphere, and so the water evaporates. So it's not the most effective system. The most effective system is to use groundwater. Is to actually use the soil and the upper parts of the Earth's crust to store water. We've been using groundwater as a source of water, extracting it. 25% of all the water we use in the world is from groundwater, but we haven't been properly using that groundwater to store water. And it's not like this complicated pumping system or anything like that. This has to do with less pavement and more surface areas where water can simply be naturally absorbed back into the ground. And the other advantage to groundwater is there's no evaporation. And it also, the soil, the whole process has actually helped clean the water. So it's an absolute win-win. And this is UNESCO 2 years ago had a big conference on groundwater. And our report 2 years ago was also about groundwater. So I'm bringing this back because it's really a big solution that is still under considered. Through the 80s and 90s, it was said and said again. It was pretty common knowledge or a common statement that the next century's wars are going to be about or over water. We're very lucky to say that this has not been happening. The conflicts over water, violent conflicts, tend to be local in nature and between different user groups. From the national security aspect, water has been much more an element or a conduit of peace than it has been for conflict. And in fact, the whole idea of conflicts over water, the term in this report because conflict has a connotation of violence, and there's not that much, direct major violence over water. We're talking about disputes, you talk about tensions. Water is, however, a victim of war, and people are victimized by war through water. The international human rights law, including the Geneva Convention, specifically prohibit any attacks on civilian infrastructure, including water systems. And so this is something that the international community can very much push and make sure that it's clear. The other things that the international community can do is promote transboundary water management, which promotes peace and shared resources between countries. And the final one is the human rights, recognizing the human rights to water and sanitation. and to make sure that these human rights are maintained in all situations, including conflict situations. The Sustainable Development Goals and SDG 6 in particular, the Sustainable Development Goal on water, for the most part, its targets are not going to be reached at current levels. So progress needs to be accelerated. Political will is probably the number one aspect, and that requires recognizing the importance of water in terms of prosperity and in terms of peace. But that also means financing. You can recognize that the importance of water supply and sanitation, how it's safe and how it helps health and promotes, well-being. But where the progress is the most needed is on sanitation. And that's because it seems there's a view that receiving water at home is more important than what happens when you pull the tap or pull the plug. But the reality is the impacts on human health and the environment from untreated sanitation are absolutely huge. 80% of the world's domestic wastewater is released to the environment without any treatment. This has repercussions on ecosystem health, human health, and then it's important for decision makers, but also people that you and I, people that are lucky enough to live in a democracy and actually can vote, to make sure that the people that we are voting to understand the importance of water and of water supply and sanitation, so that we do hit the targets of SDG 6. The theme of this year's World Water Day is Water for Peace. The World Water Development Report, published by UNESCO, is focusing on water for prosperity and peace. Now, the common term is peace and prosperity, but there's a reason we went for prosperity and peace. Because we honestly believe that by using water to build prosperity, and that means prosperity through sharing water's benefits, health, employment, education, food, energy, and ecosystems, all of these benefits lead to prosperity. And by learning to better share these benefits, that will lead to peace. So in other words, when it comes to water, sharing absolutely is caring.